Of all the peoples of the world, the Americans stand most in fear of a moment's silence. For 82 out of every 100 U.S. citizens, radio provides each day in the year a sure and ever-present escape from their own lives into an ether universe of crackling news, music, costly entertainment, and romantic adventure.
Look, I was never that kid. We didn't have a big cabinet radio we listened to in the living room. But radio poisoned every corner of my world. In the car on the way to Asbury Park in the summer, every morning over our Cheerios. 2 years before I was born, and 44 miles to the south, this man, William Shockley, was conspiring to make my life even more entangled in radio. His team was inventing and perfecting the transistor. On my 10th birthday, I got my first transistor radio. It wasn't a toy like all my birthday gifts before, but it was magic.
Stand by, please.
I guess a lot of us who were born in the middle of the 20th century owe a lot to radio. Tell us if radio had an impact on you and what, perhaps in your family home or in a car, what you would listen to, what the kinds of programs you remember, and what may have sent you in the direction of radio, if at all.
I used to listen to the usual kids stuff, Lone Ranger and all of that. Sidebar, our next door neighbor was a guy named Fred Foy, who was the narrator of the Lone Ranger on radio and TV, but he lived next to us.
Now down in Washington, one of our Columbia correspondents who helped to get the news to us so quickly, Bill Henry, is standing by. This is Bob Trout in New York. We're going to switch you quickly now to Washington. Bill Henry reporting.
When I first heard radio news, I probably was 2 years old. World War II was ending. That day forward, I wanted to have a piece of that.
We did listen to the radio a lot in our family in New Mexico. We followed Edward R. Murrow.
I was always interested in radio from the time I was a small child.
Radio was the glamour medium of my childhood, so I lived by the radio.
Saturday evening, it would have been Amos and Andy, believe it or not, or Gunsmoke, stuff like that.
I grew up listening to KDKA.
My first real contact with radio was when I went to a two-room country school outside of Madison, Wisconsin, and we listened to the Wisconsin School of the Air.
I really trace my love of radio back to when I was a real young kid, and it was in the mid-'50s, and transistor radios were just invented.
So you had this little transistor radio you could listen to, and I listened to baseball games.
I just started listening first to rock and roll music.
Top 40 radio.
Cousin Brucey.
WABC, chime time, hit time, you know.
There's also something called Monitor.
This is Monitor, reporting the nation and the world.
WBAI in the morning, Larry Josephson.
WEVD. And WEVD had the moniker, the station that speaks your language.
For that old-fashioned flavor that all the folks favor, try Hebrew National Meats.
Gene Shepard, I think.
Well, Gene Shepard.
Yes. Have you ever seen a firework maniac? I'm not talking about a guy that likes fireworks. I'm talking about a person who is creative with fireworks. I don't mean just blowing up a tin can. You know, I'm going to tell you...
I didn't know, like, wow, that's amazing radio at that age, but I knew something special happened when I crawled into bed, turned out the light, put the radio on, and listen.
It's 4th of July. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning, see. I've got my little bundle of fireworks. Schwartz has got his little bundle of fireworks. And it's early morning. We're not playing with the firecrackers much.
Sipping cider by the Zuyder-Zee, the Zuyder-Zee, the Zuyder-Zee.
Well, there was Gene Shepard, and then there was the rest of radio.
With you so close to me, love can be sublime.
And now let me tell you about McTavish's Skinless Weenies. Mmm. So long, so pink, so flavor-rich, with lots of tasty goodness. Mmm.
The trouble with being a little kid and being interested in radio is that you don't have a radio station. But you could persuade your father to let you use his fancy tape recorder to pretend.
Goodbye from Mike Sims. Goodbye. Goodbye from Nancy Silverman. Goodbye. Goodbye from Arthur Silverman. Goodbye. Hello. Goodbye from...
And then there was Alan Hovermill. In this house on Adams Court in Livingston, New Jersey, in this upstairs bedroom, Alan Hovermill had built and was using a little AM radio transmitter. We were on the air suddenly. Our voices could carry all the way out to the edge of his driveway. After a while, the idea of pretending didn't make it for us anymore. So one day we wandered up to where there were some radio towers up on the highway. We found a drab little concrete building under them, WVNJ.
It was a dreary place. It was a cinder block building, a small building behind the animal hospital off Route 10.
Yeah, I went there.
I remember being there once.
They were very nice people.
By the time I got to high school, I wanted to be in broadcasting, and there was a broadcast crew. Well, it was over the PA system, but we got to read the morning announcements every day.
Good morning, world. Today is Friday, December 18th, 1964. And now from WLIV in Livingston High School, here are your morning announcements.
Rejoice, the Lance has come. Yes, the holiday special of the Lance is being distributed now in your homeroom. Those still wishing to purchase one will
I
be able
remember
to
WLIV because it's one of the reasons why I got to school extra early.
Any student interested in being tutored by the Spanish Honor Society, please see Mr. Gorelick in room 105 during or after school. The Spanish Honor Society...
I'd like to be able to say that radio was my sole passion, but I got distracted a little bit. I mean, there were newspapers, too. So I put out my own weekly paper for a couple years. And when I wasn't doing that, I was also making 8mm movies with friends. When I went off to college, I made more movies. More terrible movies. Well, when college was over, I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't ready to move to Hollywood, so I did the next best thing. I moved to New Hampshire and got a job at a small daily newspaper in Claremont. But one day, I got an assignment to go across the covered bridge to Windsor, Vermont, where someone was setting up something called Vermont Public Radio. And this was a real radio station. At that point, I remembered what it was I loved about radio, so I started contributing programs.
It's a proud moment for a rat selected to the Olympics. It is not only the exhilaration of being in a room full of small rodents set to do battle, but the tingling expectation of...
After a while, I started sending stories down to National Public Radio in Washington.
For National Public Radio, this is Art Silverman in Winooski, Vermont.
And then one week, 3 people from National Public Radio came up to Vermont. We all worked together on a documentary.
At just about the right time, at the time it really needs to, spring begins to come to New England.
Let the sap comes through, and then you put up the buckets. And then you wait for a few days. And then when the buckets are full...
I got along pretty well with those people from NPR. And apparently they thought I did a pretty good job too.
Why does Art have a job? I said to Susan, we met this great guy up there in the snow or whatever, and we should hire him. And Susan said, I don't know, I'm not interested. And then we get a column that Art was writing for the newspaper. And I showed it to Susan at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And she read it very quickly. She reads quickly. And she just tossed it aside and said, hire him.
So I traded the bliss and beauty of New England for a tiny windowless room in Washington, D.C. I had a supply of razor blades and splicing tape. That became my life. You know, it wasn't just my skill weeding out ums and ahs that led to my success in radio. It also was the result of my powerful pitches.
The most interesting thing on this list is we're going to have a live thing with a family in Philadelphia has had a 30-year tradition of this game they play every year. It started as a little touch football game. It's become this whole derby. And fathers and sons played it back in, 30 years ago, 50s. And now it's like the families have grown. The sons are now the fathers, and the huge family playing. It's called the toilet ball, and it's played every. The name is not the joke, but it's just been this ongoing family tradition. They play touch football, and we're going to talk to them about it.
Ideas like that won me the respect of colleagues. You know, when I was back in Claremont thinking about jumping over to radio, I never thought my new job would take me to some of the places I found myself.
So we hiked right up until nightfall, and the last few miles were as miserable as any I've spent in Nepal. Tiny trails, losing our way, and at one point, a porter carrying my sleeping bag dropped it in a river, and that's drenched now.
You know, at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, do I want to be part of a club that would accept me as a member? You bet I did. Eventually, my life became intertwined with radio. Is it because I loved radio? Or did I enjoy the company of people who were attracted to radio? Over the years, people left. Unbelievably, they left NPR. Some to television, some to newspapers. And sadly, many just left the planet. These people they'll never be replaced. But the encouraging thing is that every year there's new people. And you might ask the question, why does art still have a job? Well, there's your answer.